Grainger offers professional-grade products, easy ordering, and next-day delivery, making them the go-to play for everyone keeping arenas game day ready. Call, click, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Okay, we are off to the races. All right. So I've been trying to find the right moment. It felt good to, get something, get like one of my in between projects live streams, not just a drive stream. I haven't even deprivatized the last couple of streams I did. Just because, I'm getting these things out on my way to work and whatnot. And I don't know, sometimes I'm not 100% certain of how much I want those up there, per se, just because of what they are. But anyway, so today I'm going to try and poke through some understanding of Palestine in real time with you guys. And what I'm going to be doing is that the big fucking problem with our arguments are that we are resting the issue of Israel and Palestine on biblically connected history. And gets wrapped up as a matter of history, right? And unfortunately, there's a huge swath of the world. I am in that world, which is the Judeo-Christian America, that needs these narratives to be this way. And they need to not fall into the counter narratives of the left. This is not attempting to put you into a right narrative or a left narrative to a religious narrative. Well, obviously it wouldn't be religious with me, but my point is that I'm not going there. What I want to actually do is just look at things since the fall of the Ottoman Empire. As far as I'm concerned, the only history that actually matters here is the people of Palestine at the fall of the Ottoman Empire, because whatever their agreement with the Ottoman Empire obviously falls apart. Now, they get the raw end of the deal of the religiously contested area, yet they knew it was a religiously contested area. And we start things off in a world of British-controlled Palestine, right? There's a lot of things to say. There's a lot of places I can go with things, right? Where we're going to kick things off tonight is, we're going to do this one first. We're going to run through this 16-minute clip that I found from Periscope Film YouTube channel. And I got my fair use notices up as usual. Let me see here. Let me take this particular one. There we go. Okay. Let's put this in theater mode. That should do it. I see all sorts of emojis popping off. Somebody's loving me, apparently. You can say hi in the chat, whoever you are, which apparently would be maybe one of you. One alleged concurrent viewer. Anywho, let's do this thing from Periscope Film. timestamps with footnotes.
Amid the fabled hills of Judea in southwest Asia stands Jerusalem, the capital of Palestine, sacred to three of the world's great religions. To Mohammedans, who ruled Palestine for nearly 13 centuries and still regard it as their own, Jerusalem is almost as sacred as Mecca.
Sorry to interrupt, but this...
No, you're not.
Hundreds of millions of Christians, this is the Holy Land.
By the way, do people outside of Connecticut get, like, lots of, like, Sandy Hook guy? That's like one of the Sandy Hook guys interrupting you to be like, oh my god, I need a minute to tell you about gun control because I've become that guy because I happen to be politically minded and my daughter died and this is serious and it's my right and yada yada yada.
Here, Jesus of Nazareth trod the slow, agonizing road to Calvary and the cross. Here, a great Christian shrine has been erected on the spot believed to be where Jesus began the life he was to sacrifice for all mankind. One of the oldest traditions in Palestine's history, stretching back beyond recorded time, is that of the Hebrews, symbolized by the Wailing Wall, place of lamentation and prayer since the days of Herod the Great. In no other religion has...
Now, that's interesting that he says since days of Herod the Great. The temple fell well after Herod. There wouldn't be a lamenting while the temple stood. There was lamenting in those times because their civilization was in decline and being proxied up by Rome for as long as it could.
Is Palestine a more deep and mystical significance? Throughout all the sorrowful centuries since the Hebrews were scattered over the face of the earth, their religious rituals have kept ever before them the memory of Palestine as the land promised them by Moses. Today, millions of them center their immemorial hopes for fulfillment of this promise on the new Palestine, with its shining city of Tel Aviv, built by...
This is about, the 1940s, right? This is the world that doesn't give a fuck about, like, your subculture ways that you are unless it's fit to print in a newspaper, right? So whatever the Palestinians are like, whatever the Jews are like, what they are like is whatever their narrative for the Balfour Agreement to come true is. And that's what they're going to do.
By Jews on desert and swampland. Here, world Jewry sees rising at last, a homeland in which the tribes of Israel, wanderers for over 3,000 years, may come together once again as a nation.
So now understand that there's British civilization was built in Palestine, right? And Israel is a continuation of all that work that was put in by the Brits because of where the Jewish power structure of the Zionists were operating. Remember, the things I'm talking about, I'm ultimately trying to parse out for the sake of Israel. The issue of how all of this was set up. Because this setup helps us understand more modern concerns. I'm going to be jumping ahead quite a bit after this. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time in the 40s, the 50s. We're going to jump up kind of to the fucking 80s, 90s. Okay? As I'm trying to do this, because I'm actually going to focus on Palestine here. We understand Israel. Like, okay, like here's part of what I think. Like, they go to fucking Israel. It's officially secular, and by officially that means something. You know, as far as, you know, a general sense of conduct. You know, just like we got freedoms in our country and limits to the very things we call freedoms in this country, right? Such as the context of anti-Semitism in Florida, right? If, you know, the context by which that chick got arrested was a little bit more than just her making a joke. It was just a hair more than her making a bad joke, considering several levels, including the associative group. She felt freely to say that. It's just like, save that for your YouTube channel. I bet you $1 million the governor of Florida is not going to come after you for speaking up on, like, in fact, I'm certain of it, because, you know, Project Cheney wouldn't fucking exist if he was, which could also say something, right? Some of these guys, they may know the power of the psyop of anti-Semitism, and whether they're for Zionism or not, they get boxed into a corner where they need to be Zionist because of the conduct of people that cannot have a rational conversation, right? Because they don't want us to treat Israel and the Jews by any other national, international standard. I need to fucking understand the situation better, and so do you. Not until the First World War, when the British ended 4 centuries of Turkish rule, was Palestine established as a refuge for the oppressed. Oh, that's ironic.
After Lord Allenby conquered the Holy Land in 1917, the Jews were promised a national home in Palestine by Britain's Earl of Balfour, a policy endorsed by Woodrow Wilson and the League of Nations, which made Palestine a British mandate. But in 1939, with war in the offing, the oil pipeline from Iraq through Palestine became one of Britain's major strategic worries, along with the Suez Canal, the empire's lifeline to the Far East. To ensure an uninterrupted supply of oil for its planes, tanks, and ships, Britain had to maintain peace at all costs with the predominantly Arab population, which had long been resentful of Jewish immigration. To this end, London issued a white paper which strictly limited the number of Jews admitted into Palestine.
So that's also very interesting that at the same time they were doing all this stuff, this also happens to exist, this white paper. After the period of 5 years, hang on a second. Right when I unpause it, it goes to a goddamn commercial. After the period of 5 years, no further Jewish immigration will be permitted unless the Arabs of Palestine are prepared to acquiesce in it. So back then, this at least existed as some sort of a idea of a control mechanism, something that gave a Palestinian authority say. Like who are the Arabs of Palestine? It's like, who is we the people? Oh, whoops. Hold on. It would help if I was unmuted. Wait, bring that back a hair. I don't know what I missed.
In the war years that followed, Only a few thousand of Europe's millions of unhappy Jews were able to escape the fascist tyranny and seek refuge in Palestine. By the war's end, hundreds...
Oh, I guarantee you a lot more by percentage escaped than you think, sir. A lot of them did just fine taking a train south instead of east.
Hundreds of thousands of survivors, without homes or possessions, faced a future without hope unless some place on earth could be found for them. To Europe's surviving Jews, free access to Palestine, their land of promise, is today more urgently needed than at any time in the long and tragic history of the people of Israel. Convinced that the excuse for keeping Palestine closed had ended with the war, the Jews of America brought strong pressure to bear on Britain.
This conference urges the British government to abrogate the policy set out in the White Paper of 1939 and to open Palestine to unrestricted Jewish immigration and resettlement.
Refugee Jews able to get to Palestine find there a community to a large extent self-governing. In the Jewish Agency, representing the Jewish people in the development of their national home, are centralized the administrative and executive functions of the community. The Anglo-Palestine Bank financed much of Palestine's war-created industry, and in cooperation with the Jewish Agency, has grub-staked thousands of refugees. Palestine's prosperity is reflected in Tel Aviv's own stock exchange, where any fluctuations in national stocks and bonds are watched with an eagle eye by the local brokers.
And,
Investments in hydroelectric...
So here they are. They're showing you, look at these guys. The Jews are so functional. They got a stock market already, right? Yeah, this is the British. This is the Jews. The internationalist Zionist engine of Jews, whoever that particular group that gets lumped into the naming of the Jew situation, they're setting all this stuff up, right? There's the occult side of the agenda, right? Right now, I'm sticking with the exoteric and letting you know contextual occultic facts along the way, esoteric facts along the way. I'm sticking with the exoteric because I'm trying to work with, I can accept that none of you people are going to be able to do a goddamn thing, except for the people that are the occult people. But I want to find things I can make on this channel that are helpful to the profane. No offense. But this is an occultist channel, so understand what I mean when I say profane. And you will appreciate being made aware of your profanity, right? Which doesn't mean that you have to be anti-Semitic to be not profane, because this is not what this is, right? This is me dealing with something that, although I have come to my own conclusions about things, doesn't mean it makes sense to have a hardline basis on foreign policy based on my occult understanding of things. I don't think that's helpful, because consciousness has to at least reach that level in that region where it changes the conversation of what the people want, if the people have the power to put their voice in there. The Arab world is not very fond of a lot of fucking free speech, I don't think. It doesn't really, I think that their conversations are like these, they seem to be kind of like based on these big groups that find agreement as their little social orders, like the way they are amongst their mosques, their tribes, their classes, their friends in Hamas, or whatever it is. And apparently Hamas is a tribe. Tribal factioning, right? Like, The thing is that there's all sorts of stuff about the Palestinians that nobody fucking talks about. There's not a lot of fucking shit that is to be said. But what is to be said is so fucking bothersome that, aside from the deeper shit going on by the globalist manipulators that wanted this situation for Israel to scapegoat the Jews and all this, that also Palestine, it may seriously be kind of on a hopeless cause level, not functional enough for a state of their own. Better served with a benevolent colony in a world that unfortunately has too much land competition outside of who wants your land presently. Because people that don't give a fuck about the religious reasons why you're there also need that land for trade routes and other such matters. Okay? So, let's keep going. But this is just the British economy. And this isn't a shock to anybody who understands the absolute basics of pre-47 Middle East.
Electric plants alone amount to millions of dollars. The waters of the River Jordan supply the main source of power for scores of Palestine's industrial establishments, which produce millions of dollars worth of goods a year, much of it available for export. Many industries have benefited by the skill of trained craftsmen who escaped from Europe. A whole new diamond cutting industry has been built, and its future assured by agreement with the British Diamond Trust.
Has it now? The Jews and their diamonds! Look at them! Look at them with the diamonds!
There's a growing interest in socialism among young people in America.
I'm sorry,
but do they
have
know?
to. It's just like, it has to be joked about. It just has to be. Right? And, people need to relax. I'm not trying to dehumanize anybody other than people that act like that, who are unfortunately fitting, the whole act.
Art and shipbuilding has been made in the harbor at Tel Aviv, and the facilities which in war were devoted to the construction of minesweepers are now being used to turn out boats for Palestine's fast-growing fishing fleet. On the shores of the Dead Sea, hundreds of feet below sea level, new plants extract thousands of tons of potash, bromine, and other valuable chemicals each year. To improve industrial processes and develop new products, constant research is carried on by world-famous scientists like Dr. Chaim Weizmann and his sister Anna. Ensuring the continuity of Orthodox religion, a Talmud school trains future rabbis who, at an early age, begin to acquire the knowledge and wisdom for which they will be revered in future years. Traditionally an intellectual people, the Jews have established Hebrew University, on whose faculty are some of Europe's most famous scholars, and which is today the center of Palestine's cultural renaissance. No less important than education is the physical well-being of Palestine's children. In the last 25 years, the health of the people of Palestine has been immeasurably improved, due chiefly to the work of Jewish hospitals and laboratories. Hadassah Hospital, supported by contributions from the United States, trains scores of nurses who will go out to the pioneer settlements to aid in the development of their country. But of first importance to the national welfare is the production of food. And in agricultural schools, Jews have acquired skills which have enabled them to refute the widely held belief that they do not make good farmers. Now over 30%.
Oh, where'd you get that idea? That they don't work hard? Did somebody think they didn't work hard for inexplicable reasons? Or merely the reasons that certain Jews are in certain factions that, regardless of whether they're fucking making the wealthies and the monies, that you know, they need the goy to do all sorts of stuff for them, a Shabbat goy especially, because, you know, they got to do their thing, and don't smile. Why? Am I ugly when I smile? Am I more handsome when I'm like, like, can we, you know, I can grunt and grumble, right? I can make grumpy mouth noises. I can be grumpy. I'm allowed to be grumpy. I can have all of my feelings.
Percent of them make their living from the soil, which they have reclaimed from the swamp and desert. Most of Palestine's agricultural workers live in the cooperative settlements which have been developed in their ancestral homeland during the past 20 years. In these settlements, where work begins before sunrise, every detail of daily life is based on the principle of cooperation. All work in these communities is divided and assigned by an elected committee, whose members must take into account the age and strength of the colonists before assigning them their daily chores. As a result of this program of training, careful planning, and hard work.
Now, by the way, I'll say one particular frickin' thing here when you think about this in any other framework, right? Which, as an American, I like the idea of. In fact, I've talked about this in context of Venezuela and Cuba and such. When I've been covering their colonial statuses and their socialist statuses, right? And it's like the left, I am in agreement of being anti-colonial. But that is because I'm a fucking nationalist, right? And the capitalism and the globalism had its own kind of exploitation. But it was a sustainable exploitation because of how much, you know, one way or the other, those businesses were bringing in revenue to those countries that could go into stuff. Right? And such a misplacement of a people's feelings on the issues of someone being wealthy because of a system that brings in work for them, and then they don't get paid in a significant way to the greater wealth of the boss, and they're blaming them for the way the system turns out, and all this stuff, right? It's wild, the head fuck that they put through a colonist to exploit them into socialism, right? You know, Israel is, you know, I think it's kind of on the more, like it's not like libertarian. It's a big government for Israel. There's so much going on here. My point is that you can look at what they're showing you Israel is doing. This is like, this sells well in the West, and this is authentically, the idea is that they do their thing, everybody's happy with it. It's a return on investment in a basic level. That's all good and fine. That's things that are good, that are right and okay about the state of Israel or nation. Like, why is it the state of Israel? Why is it not the... Why do we always call it the state? Like, you know, it's just like nobody says the French state. Nobody says the state of France or the state of Russia. Like, they're countries, they're nations, right? So, you know, is Israel actually a state in kind of a shadow republic of England, perhaps? And perhaps because of our agreements with England, not because England owns us, but because of agreements with England, we have agreements with Israel. Is that perhaps a big part of what's playing here? My point is, though, is that there's no reason to be jealous of the Jews because, I mean, they have a pretty authentic economy that definitely won't exist with, at the very least, radical Shia Islam's threat against it. And apparently there's some radical Sunnis out there too, but it's mostly IRGC, Ayatollah influenced Shiite. That seems to be pretty much the manifested problem.
Production of food by Jews in Palestine has almost doubled in recent years.
Well, you're seeing a lot of the secular side of Judaism. Like right now, everybody's very focused because of how our politics plays out with our religious fundamentalists' rhetoric on the foreign policy issue, which, whether it's because they want fundamentalists to be fucking stupid, or they're dealing with fundamentalists that choose to be stupid. Either way, you know, like, you're going to focus in on what plays well, right? Like, what plays well for the left's absolute way of looking at things, right? Because the left is being a little bit conservative like this. They're looking at how wrong it was to colonize Palestine the way they did and make a state out of the region where people lived in 1947. And then using that to be like, let's take this back. I want to take back this decision that people that had nothing to do with me made happen, right? And things like that, right? This is why we're going to jump significantly ahead. And of course, this video is Israel and Palestine, right? Like, Israel will continue. Like, it's not been a poor investment into Israel. It's just fucking expensive because they're under attack. And we are too stupid to look at the occult reasons that put all of this together. And we don't fucking draw the significant global associations between things. And why the thorn of the IRGC has been what it's been for so long, right? And accepted and tolerated in the manner that it has been. Is it an independent thing? Maybe that's part of the problem, is that it's an independent, irrational agent, right? Because I think that might be part of what happened with Cuba, right? I think, like, you had all these guys where they had these successful transfers to socialism, but they weren't in good lockstep or economic position, right? Like, the Soviet Union with its original thing, even though when you find out, like, it had the same problems that Cuba did and everyone else, where everybody was just trying to figure out how to, make money doing less kind of thing, right? The cultural, the work ethic decay of over the generations. You didn't have the proper cohesion with what the shadow global Bolshevik organizers amongst the deep state globalist system, right? Because I think it was the communists that were like the Nazis, anti-Semitic, but different. And that's why the Eastern Front had the problems that it did, because of communist influence on top of, Germany's this whole fucking country that probably didn't get a lot of communists out. And probably within the system, despite the Orwellianness that Hitler went for, probably still had guys of certain sentiments. And maybe Mein Kampf was not meant to get anybody exterminated, but the communists of Germany put all of that on the Nazi Party because they infiltrated it and made it what it was and became perfect fodder. Because remember, the Holocaust is a communist disclosure report. They came across Auschwitz first on the Eastern Front, and the communists got to fucking take the first photographs, meet the first victims, shoot the first Nazi camp guys that were left over. They were there first. And we've been taking their word for it and calling it American patriotism. And if that's a communist plot, then no Republican should be part of it. And ask themselves, how do I continue to be of service to good people who happen to deal with this issue of being chosen people, whether they like it or not, in a global narrative? How do I serve them well without serving that narrative? Is that okay? Is that okay with Mark Levin? Can I do that, Mark? Do I have permission to do that without being berated and demagogued in any way, shape, or fucking form? Huh? All right, so let's relax. Put your Torah down. Stop LARPing your chosenness. We're not threatening your country because I don't think you're chosen. Your country is fine because I'm not trying to get so many goddamn fucking people's lives ruined. Okay, let's get back on.
But there are also settlements wherein those who prefer to farm their own land, some 22% of the agricultural population, can live and flourish. Following the same cardinal rule of self-help which applies in the co-ops, the individual farmer must work his tract of land to the best of his ability, for he is expected to make the interest payments on his long-term loan at regular intervals.
Wait a minute. That's interest. He has to pay interest. Wait, I thought. So is that because he's not the Jew? Like, is that for the Christians of Palestine? Is that for the Muslims of Palestine? Who's that for? Is that for the atheists of Jewish descent, or the atheists of non-Jewish descent, of Arab descent? What is that? What is that? What is that with your interest rates and such? That's funny to me. Okay.
Constantly, the immigrants carry on their fight to increase the yield of the land. Always, the first and most pressing need has been water, which must be dammed up during the rainy season for use in irrigating farmland during the long months of drought. Through a complex irrigation system built at a cost of many millions of dollars, water flows throughout 100,000 acres of once arid land.
So, I think, like, okay, so you got this infrastructure situation here, which is good for them and all that. So I think after they did the thing and made the state, like, does Britain still control the parts of Palestine that are not Israel? Is that how this worked? And what does that mean, right? Like, just is Britain trying to exterminate these people? Is trying to help Israel exterminate them so they can finish giving it to Israel because they've been wanting to give all of it to them?
But though a good beginning has been made in the areas occupied by the Jews, they believe that nearly all of Palestine's 6 million acres could be made to bear crops. The search for water goes on in isolated desert camps. On land abused and eroded for centuries, teams of experts sink test wells, and on their findings will depend the future of that land.
Yeah, like, okay, so they think they can irrigate the whole fucking land. This is like what they start doing in Dune Messiah, and it's and as I'm reading Children of Dune, that is currently what Aliyah of the Knife wants to do, as the Empress since Paul died, and that's why everybody wants to kill her, because her making Arrakis completely green kills the worm and destroys spice production on the known universal level. There would be pocket planets that have suitable desert for sandworms to make spice, but it would be nothing like where Dune is at the beginning of Children of Dune, where there's still plenty of desert, and Shai-Hulud doesn't come out that much anymore, but they know he's out there in the deep desert, right? So, these last inches of Palestine, it's kind of like Aliyah of the Knife trying to, like, cut off a whole thing, right?
Is to remain a desert waste, or whether given water?
Yes. Dates from Israel are quite the seller in the grocery stores, like that, like Jewels or whatever. Israeli dates are delicious, and dates in general are fantastic because they have protein, and fiber, and natural sugars. It's chewy and delicious. Oh, you can't beat it. A date? Oh my God.
It will be the site of another new and flourishing community, brought to life by thousands of settlers.
We're one of the only social media agencies that guarantees 1 million views.
Shut up.
For marketing, if you give me 15 seconds.
Many a barren field has been cleared in Palestine to make way for vineyards and farms and villages. Many plans have been carried out to enlarge the reclaimed land areas so that they can support thousands of new settlers. To maintain in these areas Palestine's high standard of health, research stations have been established in an effort to stamp out the disease which for so many years has sapped the vitality and taken the lives of the natives. Here, the discoveries of modern medical science are made available to Jew and Arab alike. Though Palestine is still predominantly Arab, the Jewish population increased greatly from the early 20s until 1940.
Really? I wonder what the factor
was. As a result of British immigration restrictions, the Jewish increase has scarcely kept pace with that of the Arabs.
Okay, so, dude, there's Did you see that? 1 million fucking Arabs by 1945, slightly over 500,000 Jews. This is 2 years. 2 years before they give Israel statehood by the UN. Apocalypsis Historia. What's good, dude?
Side by side with the Jewish population, the Arabs, outnumbering them 2 to 1, live in their immemorial manner. Though noted for their independence and readiness to fight, the Arabs have in recent years been coming into Palestine in increasing numbers as workers. For the high wages they earn on the Jewish-owned farms and plantations bring them a new and welcome prosperity.
They're working on the Jewish plantation. You don't say, Massa. You don't say.
And not only has the working class Arab profited by the presence of the Jews in Palestine, but to many an Arab property owner, wealth and pleasant living have come from the sale of his land to the immigrants. Nevertheless, the Arabs are determined to keep Palestine an Arab country and to resist every move by Britain to admit more refugees. And their threats are backed up by the League of Arab States and by armed and trained men, ready to shatter the peace of the Near East by a religious war.
All right, so that's where they, get into the ominous issue. And here's all these guys. And, look at them. Look at them. They're on horseback with spears. 1940s, right? It's like, they're on horseback with spears. And it's just like they're not modern, but they're pretty serious. And that's been the story our entire lives. The Arab world is always about fucking 100 years behind us. Right? Iran is very proud of their army of Toyotas. Pickup trucks.
Repeatedly, the London spokesman for the Arab states has warned Britain's government that its policy is not acceptable to the Arabs.
Every Jew that arrives in Palestine is one more brick in the structure of the proposed Zionist state, one more unit towards the Zionist majority against the Arabs, so that it is impossible for the Arabs to regard the matter only in its humanitarian aspect. The political question was finally settled by the White Paper, and any attempt to force more refugees on Palestine now, on whatever grounds it is ostensibly made, would be a breach of that settlement.
But the Jews, whose arguments for a free Palestine before the war were strong, are sure that they now have an irresistible case. For not only have millions of men and women of Jewish faith been tortured and murdered in Europe, but 30,000 who formed the Jewish Brigade fought in the Desert Campaign and in Italy to free the world of fascism.
So here you have, so these are British soldiers. These are British soldiers of Jewish descent, which we all know was established by Nazi-based eugenic science for determining your Jewish origins or not, right? And so these guys would be early fucking military recruits with prior battle experience in the manner in which our history unfolds, with wars all the fucking time, never ending, various reasons, right? In America, largely because we decided to be the policemen of the world. Let's enforce all the treaties and everything else. And, it's whatever. It's fine. It's when you're the one when it's your culture is the empire in control, you feel differently about things, right? Because, I was born into a world under my country's control, and it seems like we're doing a mostly good job, right? You know, because nobody's gonna fucking sit there and say you're doing a terrible job and whatever. And even now, America's not doing a terrible job with anything other than what is politically disliked by this president. You know, this nonsense. So anyway. And so this is just about how they got started. This is about where their foundation, you know, this is their economic foundation, their populist foundation, their origins of where their mindsets were at, their social dynamics. Look, man, I don't think every criticism of the Arab world that you hear from the Jews is I mean, yeah, from the Jews is wrong. Like I said, this, like, we can talk about deep history. We can talk about the deep influence of organizations and cults and things. And we can talk about the dark money. And dark money will always, you know, have a more prominent place in the exoteric side of the discussion because it's a connective tissue that any practical, rational person following this stuff can understand, right? But here we are with the whole sales pitch.
Today, the quota under which refugees from Europe can enter Palestine is the concern of Jews the world over.
Oh, look at that. Oh, the Jews are happy to get on trains here. Ah, yeah, Jews. We promise. There will be nothing tumultuous about living in this place one way or the other. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. Don't worry about it. The West will protect you from the Arab world for a long-ass time.
And they fervently hope that in the future, all Jews who wish to will be permitted to enter Palestine, far from the scenes of their torture and degradation, to pursue happiness in their ancient homeland as free men and women.
The end. Okay, so that's the British Palestine thing. So before I jump into this, I caught this, and I want to use this that I found. It's the one bit I'm grabbing from Rumble. I guess it's from Bongino. I guess it's a Dan Bongino thing, but it doesn't matter. It's just a clip on this guy's website, if this even is run by Dan's people. And it's from Dr. Phil. And this was interesting. We're talking about modern right now. And then we're going to jump back to the 90s.
Read it, that the charter of Hamas is to eliminate the Jewish race, beginning with Israel, but not stopping with Israel, wiping them off the face of the earth. Is that true?
This is true, but it does not end there. Now we have the problem of the pro-Palestine.
Now, if you saw that this guy is a son of Hamas leader, and he's the guy who says that Hamas is a tribe, and he's going to explain a few things, and he's going to put this pro-Palestinian Western chick in her place, or something.
We have the problem of the pro-Palestine who are actually giving Hamas cover. They are participants in the crime. In fact, since October 7, I personally don't differentiate between Hamas and what's so-called Palestinians. Because actually there is no Palestinians. There are tribes. There is the tribe of Hamas, and there is the tribe of the Islamic Jihad, and there is the tribe of Khalil, and there is the tribe of Nablus.
So, Ash in the chat asks, this is not their ancient homeland. For the Arabs living there, it's hard to quite say. It depends on how well the Ottomans kept records of like stuff like, you know, the Ottomans would have had what they wanted to do with people in that region, as not necessarily a very free place, so on and so forth. There's been ancient, sure, right? And we've got the problem that as long as the Bible is not acknowledged as having paltered history and understanding that there's too much mythology of the kingdom of Israel in the Bible from these sources, that they're trying to use the mythology of their nation to undercut as such. Right? And the Caucasoids are the Turkic people, Turkic, like the Ottomans are Turks, that moved north when they were driven out of the Arab lands into the Caucasus Mountains. They became the Khazarians. And those people, somewhere along their history, made the conversion. Those are the people, those Khazarians are a big part, especially the high people of their place, of Khazaria, who moved on from things when their empire collapsed throughout aspects of Europe, and had a strong influence on Zion for their part in what has been this agenda of their order, right? And there's a lot of connective tissue of what specifically is Khazarian that matters, right? And there's a lot of things that, you know, not all of these Jewish groups that we see on our radar are doing the same thing. They're just competing on the same level, but they're not doing the same thing.
And each one has different interests, and all of them are conflicted. If they did not have Israel as the common enemy, they would kill each other. This is the reality of what's so-called Palestine. Rhetoric? You don't know what Palestine is. Actually, in fact, the keffiyeh that you are wearing, this is just a statement to show that you really lack the authenticity to represent the case. And what's so-called the cause, you know, this is a human problem.
So you just...
The cause must die. I think enough is enough. And now it's proven, and you are helping Hamas to prove it to the world, that Palestine depends on the destruction of the state of Israel. And this is not acceptable, and we are not going to agree to it. And I tell you something, for the next 10 or 20 years, the Palestinian people will pay the bill that Hamas is caused today, and most likely in blood.
To you, Hamas and Palestinians are the same. They're one and the same.
After October 7, yes, there is no difference.
Really?
The vast majority of the Palestinian people support Hamas.
Really?
This is a fact. This is proven by statistics, and your silence now. You cannot even condemn Hamas and say that what they did on October 7 was an act of a savage group. You don't have that power.
Said I condemn.
On what authority do you speak? You only speak on the authority of Hamas propaganda.
No, why do you say that I'm speaking on the authority of Hamas propaganda?
Because if you were a decent human being, you can say that the thousands were killed on October 7. That was a crime against humanity. It was a genocide.
Right? So he's got a very interesting take. This guy's son of Hamas, and I've understood, like, a lot of people have said that the Mossad effectively is running the backside of Hamas, right? And the Mossad is is a functioning agency out of Israel, but it's a global agency, right? They've got enough fucking power that if they wanted to pull the strings, you know, they could take out just about anyone. Typically, if you're just some guy, which I think I qualify as just some guy, I guess, as amazing as I allegedly am, they don't take you out. I know I'm on the fucking radar. I have to be on the radar. I interviewed Roger Stone. If that doesn't put you on the fucking radar, I don't know what does. Anyway. So here's some footage. This is like 7, almost 8 minutes in Gaza, 1990. And another thing I have here is I found this, researchgate.net. May have to resize this a little bit, but this is pretty long, but I decided to look Palestinian tribes, clans, and notable families, right? And so there's some of this stuff. Palestinian society, I want to read a little bit of this first because we just did a lot of video. Palestinian society in the West Bank and Gaza Strip is characterized by 3 types of clan-like familial structures: tribes, clans, and notable families. While all 3 share similar extended familiar attributes, behavioral obligations, especially on males, informal networks, and honor-shame cultural systems, they are also quite distinct in their origins and continuing importance. This is by who again? This is Glenn E. Robinson, Naval Postgraduate School. Okay. All right. So he was in the Navy, I'm assuming the American Navy. And he wrote this this is January 2009, right? So this is a very, you know, so this is far enough back in time, I think, where this can make a whole lot of sense to people, right? Wait, should I go bigger or smaller with this? Probably. No, that looks like it's making it worse. No. All right, we'll just leave it like that. Okay. Of the 3 clan-like structures in Palestine society, actual tribes are the least politically and socially important. Here, tribes refer to descendants of nomadic and semi-nomadic Bedouin populations. Only a tiny handful of Palestinian tribes are currently still semi-nomadic. About 15% of the Palestinian population is of tribal origin, 25% in the Gaza Strip, much less in the West Bank. And the large majority of the Palestinian population derived from sedentary peasant roots, even those estimates are likely on the high side. Right. Because, like I almost say, like, these are like the Native Americans, like they weren't interested in building anything, right? They had no interest in developing, in being a part of whatever, and there's this whole fucking world happening around them, right? The empire that was around them has collapsed, right? And you've got this whole Arab world that was liberated by that and has reorganized itself in certain ways, right? And we never ask ourselves exactly what the Arabs wanted to do with Palestine, in which we felt like we needed to go in there and manipulate things. I think that the way we hear about this stuff, when you're coming out of one world of ignorance, it comes out differently, right? And it goes into the greater dehumanization, decharacterization process, right? And listen, I'm not saying that I'm ever going to feel like I ought to fucking go visit Israel for the sake of my assumptions that that maybe it's okay that they fucking exist. I would not have any part of their fucking society. But what I am saying is that I don't know. I see less and less reason to be that sympathetic to who these Palestinians are because of context of the time, right? In the context of the time in which we were going through Manifest Destiny expansion, right? You know, we're making sure that that's a land that doesn't get swallowed up by the British in Canada or the Russians that would be interested in taking the Arctic Circle region. But anyway, and result of the hyper concern over property rights that Bedouin tribes moving freely in Palestine has essentially ended as their ability to shepherd livestock freely, sedentarization and the loss of the traditional division of labor have made tribal affiliations less important. In addition, Palestinian Bedouin populations are among the economically most deprived groups in the region, further diminishing their political clout. Right. It comes with that frustrating issue when all of a sudden people come in and they start laying claim to land. They start cutting you off from your self-sufficiency to get you working with their money to go and do business with their people, such as all those guys setting up banks and putting out loans. White tribes are not nearly as politically or economically important in Palestine as they are throughout the Arabian Peninsula. All right. So then we got clans. I'm not exactly sure when something is a clan and not a tribe. Clan structure in Palestine is far more consequential than Bedouin tribes and has become even more important since the breakdown of the Palestinian Authority structure during the Second Uprising, or the Infadat al-Aqsa, beginning in 2000. A clan of Hamula, plural Hama'il, will consist of at least several extended families, or Ayal, or Ayala, which is kind of like Aaliyah. I mentioned Aaliyah the knife earlier. Isn't that funny? Anyway, claiming a shared ancestry and linked through the father's male line. Okay. That's interesting, right? Because just because to note that with Jews, they're following importance of things on the female side, right? Which is part of their structure of their gynocracy. The female children who marry outside of the Hamula and their children then belong to other Hamula. Their nasab, or relationship in law, will bind them to a new Hamula. Okay. All right. Individual households, Bayat families, Elayef clan. Just kind of gleaning over this a little bit. We're going to come back to it. I'm not reading the whole effing thing right here. And I'm not reading the whole thing tonight. Second, clans have historically been organizing tools for cultivating shared lands, or musha lands. Hamulas are specifically peasant-based, and peasant clans would share cultivation responsibilities for most all fertile lands in Palestine, except for small private or mulk plots, and in some cases, miri or state lands. The prominence of musha lands has diminished consistently since the adoption of the Ottoman Empire of 1858 Land Law Code, the growing legal recognition of private property under British and Jordanian rule, and especially since 1981, Israel's expansive classification of state land in the West Bank for colonization purposes, thus an economic pillar for clan life, has weakened. So clan life has been dying since you know, the late Ottoman Empire, 1858. You know, in less than 80 years, the Ottoman Empire is not going to fucking exist. Right? So it's like how I have kind of griped about with Native Americans. You're a civilization and you're a people in decline. You're not raising up to civilization standard. And you're using your religion as a reason not to cut down a lot of trees and dig into the earth and, God forbid, break some rocks apart.
In the 1990s, the sound of the street is already alive. Vendors calling out, cars passing by, kids running through narrow alleyways. Life here wasn't what most people imagine today. It wasn't just conflict. It wasn't just politics. For most people, it was just life. Going to school, working jobs, hanging out with friends, trying to build something normal in a place that wasn't always stable. This is what daily life in Gaza in the 1990s actually looked like. For the average person, life followed a simple rhythm. Mornings started early, shops opened up, bakeries filled the streets with the smell of fresh bread, and families got ready for the day. Fresh bread was a big part of daily life. People would often stop by local bakeries in the morning, picking up warm bread for the day. It was simple, affordable, and something every family relied on. Kids would get ready for school, usually walking there with friends, sometimes long distances. Schools were often crowded, and resources were limited, but education was taken seriously. Parents pushed their kids to succeed because for many families, education felt like the only real path to a better future. Adults went to work, if they had work. That was one of the biggest challenges. Jobs weren't always stable. Some people worked inside Gaza, while others traveled outside for work, especially into nearby areas when restrictions allowed it. But even with uncertainty, people adapted. By midday, the streets were fully alive. Markets were one of the most important parts of daily life. You'd see fruits and vegetables stacked high, vendors calling out prices, people negotiating over small amounts of money, people fixing cars, selling clothes, running businesses. Shopping wasn't just about buying things, it was social. People talked, joked, caught up with neighbors. It was a community that kept moving forward, no matter what. In the afternoon, things slowed slightly. The heat, the long day, people would rest, eat, or spend time at home. Then in the evening, life picked up again. Kids were back outside playing. Families gathered, streets filled with conversation. Even with all the uncertainty, there was still a sense of community among people that shared the same pain. The economy in Gaza during the 90s was fragile. After the early 1990s and the peace agreements, there was a short period of hope. New jobs appeared, and there was a sense that things might improve. And for a while they did. More people found work, movement was easier, money flowed a little more freely. But that didn't last consistently. Closures, restrictions, and political tension made the economy unpredictable. Some days, workers could travel for jobs and trade would flow. Other days, borders would close and income would stop instantly. It made life very tough, not knowing if you'll be able to work tomorrow. Imagine you're living paycheck to paycheck and your income is just enough to cover your bills. Then out of nowhere, your income gets cut off and you start go in full panic mode because now you can't pay your bills. This is the reality that many families faced in Gaza during this time. Because of that, many families relied on small businesses, street vending, help from relatives. Money was tight for most people, but at the same time, markets were still alive. People still bought food, clothes, and basic goods. Life didn't stop, it just adjusted. The 1990s were a time of major political change. For the first time, local Palestinian governance began to take shape in Gaza. There was a sense of hope in the early part of the decade. People thought, maybe things will stabilize. Maybe we'll have more control over our lives. New police forces appeared, government offices opened. There was an effort to build structure and order. But reality was more complicated. Political tensions didn't disappear. There were still conflicts, protests, uncertainty about the future, So while some people felt hopeful, others remained cautious. It was a period where optimism and doubt existed at the same time. When it comes to safety, the reality was mixed. In many neighborhoods, people felt relatively safe among their own communities. Everyone knew each other, families looked out for one another, neighbors helped each other, but outside of that, there were risks. Not necessarily everyday crime like in big cities, but more related to instability. Things like sudden clashes, military presence, political unrest. These created an environment where things could change quickly. One day could feel normal, the next could feel tense. Kids still played outside, people still gathered in the streets, but there was always an awareness in the background that things weren't fully stable. The 1990s in Gaza weren't defined by full-scale war every day, but conflict was always part of the reality. There were periods of relative calm, followed by moments of tension. You might hear news of clashes, political developments, protests forming, and people would adjust. Someday.
So I would say that you're probably looking at a people that they've been living probably under a more colonial socialist kind of life, I think. Like, it's not, at least here, it's not, I would not say it's actually socialist, but it's a little bit socialist, because, like, you can see there's things here, right? Like, here's some guys in a band, right? You know, and they've got, like, some sort of freedom of speech ability, and as far as we know, there isn't a bunch of fucking, you know, death to Israel all over the fucking place. You know, and people seem to go to work, and they got stores. You know, it's a question of, like, what their work is, and they don't have big developments. They've got, like, these modest developments, and they have cars and stuff here, right? But they don't have, like, the super, you know, they can't have, like, the universities and stuff like that, right? So they're in a weird spot where they're adopting plenty of modernity, and at the same time they're still kind of they're at a cap-off limit, because they can't seem to produce the right kind of people that could propose their own functional whatever, right? And this is something where it's just like they could have been doing something to this degree for themselves for a long time, including how they would structure themselves within the Ottoman Empire. And, you know, like, nobody likes the guy who's saying what I'm saying, that says, like, well, maybe there was a big reason they needed to get with the program, and we're just demonizing the people that had to deal with those that couldn't get with the fucking program. Right? And we're all very frustrated because of how hidden the secret agenda has been, and then it kind of pops out, and you're trying to warn people about it before they sign the wrong deal. Right? Okay, let's get through this. We're almost done.
Days, streets were crowded and lively. Other days, things felt quieter, more cautious. For families, the goal was simple: protect your kids, keep life as normal as possible. That meant sending children to school, keeping routines, avoiding dangerous areas. Life didn't stop because of conflict. It just learned how to exist around it. Despite everything, people still found ways to enjoy life. Kids played soccer in the streets. That was probably the biggest form of entertainment. No fancy fields, just open spaces, alleys, or any patch of ground. Teenagers hung out in groups and talked, walked around and listened to music. TV was a big deal too. Families gathered around to watch shows, news, or movies together. Even with limited channels, people connected through shared shows, movies, and cultural programs. Everyone watched similar things, which made it easier to bond and relate. There were also cafes where men would sit, drink tea, and talk for hours. This is a consistent theme all throughout the Middle East and in Arab culture. Groups of adults would meet in cafes and socialize. This is also very common in Western countries with Arab communities. Small gatherings with friends and relatives were also very common. People didn't wait for perfect conditions to enjoy life. They found moments wherever they could. Because in an environment where so much was uncertain, those small moments meant everything. Nightlife in Gaza in the 90s wasn't like big global cities. It was quieter, more community-based. Evenings were about family time, visiting relatives, sitting outside and talking. Shops stayed open later and the streets still had energy, but in a calmer way. You'd see people walking, kids still playing, friends gathering. It wasn't about clubs or big parties, it was about connection. So what was life in Gaza in the 1990s really like? It wasn't just conflict, it wasn't just struggle. It was normal people, trying to live normal lives, working, raising families, finding moments of happiness in between uncertainty. And that's what often gets lost in history. Because behind every headline and big political events, there are everyday lives that continue no matter what.
Right. Now, nowadays I hear that their school systems all have harshly anti-Israel like rhetoric stuff, right? And it's a deterioration of their ability to fucking like negotiate. Like things have soured tremendously in 30 years, basically, right? That's what we're understanding here. Let's go back over here and see if I can get a little bit more. Okay, so like notable families. Okay, so the third clan-like grouping in Palestine in the urban elites' notable families, a social formation typical through the Arab lands of the Ottoman Empire. Many of the most well-known and prominent Palestinian families come from this notable order, the Ayan social class, the Husseini, Nashashibi, the Dajani, the Abd al-Hadi, the Tukan Nabulsi, the Kohri, the Tamini, there's a lot of them. Khatib, Jabari, Masri, Kanan, Shaka, Baguthi, Shahwa, Reyes, and others. And others, so there's more, right? But those are the most predominant ones, I guess. They are extended families that dominated Palestine politics until the 1980s and are still relatively predominant today. I wonder which one of these names put Yasser Arafat on the table. Anyway, who was the guy you saw in the video there, the leader with Bill Clinton. Okay, here's under Arafat. So getting under Arafat, this puts us right in like the 90s and stuff. As noted, the first Palestinian Intifada weakened the power of Palestinian clans and notable families by bringing to power at the societal level a new elite that was relatively modernist in its orientation. The elite, also known as the Intifada elite, or Young Guard in Khalil Shikaki's nomenclature, emphasized institutional authority and was critical to building a civil society organization in the West Bank and Gaza. Civil society represents non-familial, horizontal forms of social organization at odds with clanist social organization, which is familial and vertical. Yasser Arafat instituted a politics of antithesis in order to consolidate his power and the power of the external-based PLO elite. that returned from exile, largely from Tunisia in 94. In spite of the fact that the Intifada elite, or Young Guard, was linked to the PLO, they still represented the threat to the Tunisian PLO because of their superior everyday grassroots authority in West Bank and Gazan society. In order to weaken this competing elite and strengthen his own political hand, Arafat instituted policies designed to undermine institutional politics and strengthen the politics of personality, family, and patronage. In short, there was a tribalization of politics under Yasser Arafat as a means to consolidate his power. Okay, interesting. So if there was a tribalization process, that means that he's also creating division within Palestine amongst people that are not that are Palestinians for a pro-Palestinian state. This gets into the statements of the Hamas guy that I was just talking about, doesn't it? So, like I said, I'm not going to go crazy reading all of this. The final example of the tribalization of politics under Arafat was a recruitment process by the various security forces, about 14 in all. Each security force tended to recruit new members from specific clans. Thus, security forces became an extension of clan politics and interests. And rivalries amongst clans then got reflected in rivalries amongst security forces. Clan rivalry was not the only source of fragmentation among the security forces, but it was a major contributing factor. You see? That dude was not lying to her. He was not lying to her. They don't want you to know this. They don't, like, this is a gross injustice, right? And they're obviously, and everybody knows how bad of an idea this was since the Balfour Agreement, or Declaration, or whatever the fuck its proper title is. So, the role of clans under conditions of state breakdown, 2000 to 2008, right? So, in other words, Arafat was like a hopeful experiment, right? Back then, like, I guess, like, when you watch the news, they would tell you that there's probably some inner fighting in Palestine and Israel's trying to deal with it and dealing with this and that. So, like, I think also, like, all these places in Palestine are, you know, are basically being held out by people that they didn't want to be a part of Israel. And be, like, in, you know, having a decent life. I would imagine that there's a lot of, you know, Palestinians in Israel that are troublesome, so I'm not saying that Israel's never done harm to a Israeli citizen Palestinian Arab who's probably Muslim and all that jazz. Oh my gosh, you see how wildly complicated it is to keep the balance on all the things about these sides that we fucking know. Oh my gosh. And then clan politics under Hamas rule in Gaza, which is pretty much where we're at today. In 2006, they had parliamentary elections, substantially enhanced its power in Palestine, right? And it's yeah. So it's just like, Palestinians may not quite understand it themselves. They're just looking at themselves being caught in the crosshairs because there's so much intermixing probably within Palestine, because it's just kind of like an open fucking territory per se, where everybody is among everybody. And if there's a lot of fucking influence from who the Iranians operate with. The Revolutionary Guard doing, like, mission in Palestine or something like that. I can only imagine how dangerous it can be, including how dangerous the Palestinians are to themselves, right? And now I guess this October 7th situation has changed things tremendously, right? And it's just absolutely amazing how little is to be known, and there's no good sources coming out of Israel that, that don't just, like, say, like, listen, Israel doesn't fucking look good doing any of this, but whether they look good or not, they gotta do it, right? Regardless of whether the Likud party gets to fucking amp up their fucking fundamentalists the way the Republican Party in America gets to amp up its fundamentalists. Yeah, it's wild, the problems that we are dealing with in this respect. Okay, well, I think that's good for an initial assessment on Palestine for the night. I'm pretty tired. I'm going to call it here, and I've probably seen enough. I think I've probably seen enough to honestly say that, like, there's only so far that you can go with your ideological position on a matter, right? You may not understand things past what your idealistic virtue is, right? And in politics, you tip that fucking scale, it affects all sorts of things very problematically, right? So we'll see if there's more to be said. Hopefully that me saying this puts something out in the universe to inspire someone to be like, why the fuck aren't we getting enough people on the ground in Palestine? Just some podcaster goes to Palestine wisely, doesn't make assumptions. I don't care. You want to go with a goddamn fucking, Israeli escort or whatever, if there's a part of Palestine that trusts, but that might be too late if now we're saying since October 7th, right? This is a hell of a way to do things. And the problem is that I think the Arabs, from their Quranic point of view, would probably make some very scary good points that the Anglican world, that all sorts of people, of religious variety would not be able to handle, and it would trick the secular and atheist world into sympathizing with them under their nonsense of absolute globalism as a psychotic imagination of world peace and prosperity through communism. Which then opens the floodgates through George Soros's Open Society for their breeding program to come in and put massive fucking, harems of families all over the frickin' place. And there's a reason why it gets so ugly within a generation or two. with a Muslim population in your country that gets to live within its laws almost to the exclusion of national and natural law. And this is why the more altruistic idealistics of these issues, including the pro-Israel issue, do not get to prevail. And it's quite obvious to me that Islam is way less friendly to pagans than even the fundamentalist Christians in this nation, at least while they have only small measures of fucking power. Very limited small measures. Right? Anyway, you guys have a great night.